Once you get the microphone, if you could stand up, identify yourself, and pose your question to Wayne. There's some in the front here, please, Stu, as well.
Wayne, David Leclerc. When we try to transfer money offshore, we need to do a whole bunch of work. How do these guys transfer billions? Aren't the banks culpable? And why aren't they being held accountable?
Yeah, excellent question. The banks are a problem. And the flags are there, and they look away. And they look away because they make millions out of these transactions. If you just look at the assets, the rate swaps and the transactions that have happened, and all the banks, by the way, you must see how much money they make out of one account, multi-millions of rands with these transfers that take place. So they look away. HSBC in Hong Kong, if you just see how the money flowed from the Transnet funds into 2 or 3 accounts in Hong Kong, and then just literally the next day into about 50 to 60 accounts, and how this money flows around the world. And we got all of that through the Gupta leaks, got the bank statements, prepared cases, by the way, for the NPA. All they had to do is go and verify some of the stuff. But the banks, just coming back to the question of what's going to happen there, we believe that the banks have to be held accountable here in South Africa. They need to be, the cases need to be brought against them by the NPA. And we'll be helping them and assisting building some of those. And they've got to answer a lot of questions. But without a doubt, none of this would have happened. I think very late in the day they could see that they couldn't turn a blind eye anymore, which is why they started closing the accounts of the Guptas. And you see it happening now with Iqbal's accounts as well. When it's so obvious and you can't explain why you're still looking away, they have to start acting. But they acted far too late, and they are responsible for a lot of the problems.
Danita, Trevor Ngube behind you.
Wayne, I'm going to claim you as Zimbabwean, and you're brave because you're Zimbabwean. And you and I have had exchanges over e-tolls. Well done for the work that you have done. My concern in our exchanges has been this, that South Africans are paying for private security companies to protect them because the state can't protect them. South Africans are paying for private schools for the education of their kids because the quality of education in government schools is poor, and so on and so on. And my conversation with you was, at that particular time, I didn't foresee what you had seen, that the money would be siphoned out of the country. And my concern was, as far as I was concerned, I could see the thinking around, let's use e-tolls to build roads. Because look at this road that we've driven from from the main highway, portals all over. Yeah. And my sense was, using my Zimbabwean experience, that the main roads in South Africa, if we're not careful, are going to end up like this. Because in the bigger scheme of things, when it comes to, do we build roads or steal money? We're going to steal money, not build roads. But if there is a place where we know it's transparent, money has been raised through e-tolls, we hold them accountable, we'll use that money to ensure that roads are built. I mean, I'll speak tomorrow about this. Let me just let the cat out of the bag. We have a similar situation in Zimbabwe where roads have been declared a disaster thing for Zimbabwe. And what's happening? Billions of money are being pumped out. Who's winning the tenders? Yeah. Government-connected people. So are you not concerned that we will get to a point 5 years down the line where the road infrastructure is not receiving the attention that it deserves because the DA has not won that middle portion, but the EAF has, and they're using their access to state resources to enrich themselves and not to build infrastructure? That's my concern.
Okay. Thanks, Trevor. And yeah, it was an interesting discussion, and I even had similar discussions with Davy Ruert and others who felt, look, this is a user pay scheme. What's wrong with it? What was wrong with this specific one is that this is urban infrastructure. This is not the long-distance tolls that we've become used to. And we believe in user pay schemes. And we're not against public-private partnerships. And that's what you're talking about. Public-private partnerships, when they get the money, they spend it where they should, and the roads are well looked after. And that's all very well and fine when it works like that. But what was happening in Gauteng, 1% of SANRAL's roads was going to give them 34% of their revenue. That's not a user pay scheme. That's a users being totally abused scheme. And it was going to do so siphoning funds offshore. And then what we found, by the way, is that 186 kilometer of road upgrade, not new road, cost 18 billion rand, 17.9 billion rand. And our calculations, and SANRAL's own calculations prior to it, because we watched all their figures and projections for this project, was put down to, their projections was put down to about 4 billion rand. It's cost 18 in the end, and under their watch, and obviously the Competition Commission found there was collusion, but it was far greater than what they made it out to be. So public-private partnerships is one way of getting funds to where it should go, but we are challenging these long-distance tolls as well, and I'll tell you about that very briefly right now. But the money is there, folks. The money that comes through national government that is allocated to the provinces, and the roads you're talking about are provincial roads. We'll get into the municipal ones separately. That's also there from the rates and taxes. What happens is the money gets paid to, from Treasury to the provinces to go and spend on the roads, and they don't. They plunder it. They spend it wherever else they can, because roads is one of those things we'll resurface it next year. No, we'll do it the year afterwards. And maintenance is the problem. And you see it in all our towns and cities, no maintenance, water infrastructure breaks down, the plants that are supposed to recycle the sewage and that, and everything is just collapsing and it starts flowing into our rivers. Our problem is accountability and transparency. And when that closes up, no one's held accountable, and they're not transparent on procurement, that's where the plundering takes place. And then incompetence, cadre deployment. We've got people that cannot run cities and towns and provinces. So the funds are there, it's allocated. The fuel levy gives 85 billion rand to the state. When the e-toll started, it was only getting probably about 25 billion. So it's been increased to the fuel levies, the fuel levy component. You know, if they just spent the money where it should be allocated and spent, and then spent it and held the contractors to account for quality. And how many times, just ask this hotel manager, the road over the mountains here that was paid for up front, and then the guys abscond, and you have to pay again. The road from Villiers to Meermil, over to Newcastle, the road I go quite often to see my folks there. 5, 6 years ago, redone beautifully, but it didn't last 5 years. So we have bad contractors, no oversight. It's just frustrating, but when it comes down to urban roads, the roads that you and I travel every day to get to work and back, these should never be tolled. This is what we call social infrastructure. You shouldn't have to put a mother in a situation where it's the end of the month, she hasn't got money to pay for the tolls, her daughter's waiting outside school, and she has to take the back roads and get stuck in traffic and traffic lights and so on. That should never be allowed to happen. She should take the fastest route. That's what commuter routes are all about. Long distance corridors like the N3TC, Bakwena and Track, those are good user pay schemes. We got used to them, but they're 100% hit rate. The boom doesn't lift unless you pay. Whereas the e-toll scheme was always going to fail because it was a drive now, pay later scheme. And you go and try and get the money out of people when they know that they start sharing notes. I don't pay my bill, do you pay your bill? This is what I do. I've cloned that number plate. I do this, I do that. I mean, people learned very quickly how to escape this. Taxis didn't have to pay. They were never going to pay. So it just became an administrative nightmare. It was always going to collapse. We tried to tell them that, and they wouldn't listen. But they should never have even gone down that road on an urban road, on an urban infrastructure. And well done to the city of Cape Town, because they could see what Nazir was going to do on the back of our case, and they took it on, and they won. And they found that Nazir Ali had perjured himself. He had lied in court. So money was going to flow away from this country. That's what made it bad. On the long-distance tolling, these are build, operate, and transfer contracts, 30 years. And when they set those up 25 years ago, they set them up, the road infrastructure, the road accounts were low, and over the last 25 years, they've inflated those tariffs, and traffic has moved from rail to road. They are making a ton of money. And we've said to Sanral, can we have the contracts and can we see the financials? And they won't give it to us. So we've had to go to court. The court has ruled in our favor, and they're doing everything they can. And we say to these companies, the private companies that are operating, why do you not want to show us information that we're entitled to? We pay those tolls. You're not entitled to keep this away from us. So it's sad that you have to go to court to get the own information, but that's the reality. But Trevor, yeah, it's been a long journey, and you were right at the time. We got a lot of people saying, but this is user paid, so I'm going to pay my bills. And it was 85, it was supposed to get to about 95% compliance. It never got to over 40. It's down to 15%, and it's failed, completely failed.
Do I get another bite at the cherry?
You get another bite at the cherry.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you so much, Wayne. It's a great honor to be able to listen to you, and to have Alec and you and all of us here is what we call the whole of society approach. Yeah. We all do what we can where we are, and the cumulative effect of that, is very, very powerful in society. Yeah. So it just takes enough people in the right places who are these points of light, all connecting with each other in the whole of society approach, and you've been an amazing point of light, just as Alec and BizNews have been. So congratulations for that. My question is this. Are you not overestimating the capacity of the National Prosecuting Authority? I think it is broken beyond what any of us realize, and it was broken deliberately to ensure that impunity that Jacob Zuma knew he needed to enable that entire network of cronies to steal the place blind. And I do know that the rules have been dumbed down so much that most of the prosecutors there cannot even write an indictment on the simplest of cases. And from the Nugent Commission, from the Party Commission, now from the Zondo Commission, I mean, even in yesterday's Zondo report, he says, these and these and these people can be prosecuted, and with a bit more research, the ANC is the first accused. That's what he said.
Yeah.
But the capacity is not there to do it, even on the lowest hanging fruit like China South Rail, where they set up Regiments Asia as the source of all the money they were going to scream off in China. They've got all the evidence. Nugent left with all the evidence of SARS. They cannot do it. They've taken the weakest prosecutors who did the kind of dronk op straat prosecutions in the lowest magistrates' courts, put them into the National Prosecuting Authority, and they say, God help us if anything actually lands on our desk that we actually have to prosecute. And the hawks are as useless, and they just pass things over one to another, trying to get things off their desk. I know that. Now, Shamila Batoy, I'm afraid, is a little bit like Cyril. He bobs along like a cork on the current, and he can't take the lead and drive it because it's too lightweight on the heaviness of the current. So what are we going to do to fix the prosecution authority, without which the accountability will never exist that you talk about? That's the first thing. The second thing is the police have become so intertwined with criminal syndicates that they are useless, and we're showing that in Cape Town. We've deployed 1,000 LEAP officers in 11 high crime areas that have brought down the murder rate in some places by 41% and are picking up 7 illicit firearms a week, most of which come from SAPS issue. So we're fighting the criminal syndicates in the police and having huge effects by just getting a few non-corrupt people on the beat. We have to decentralize the police to DA governments so we can manage the 28,000 police that they've got in Cape Town, not just the 1,000 LEAP officers that we've been able to put with our own money on the streets. So what are we going to do about the prosecuting authority? And should we now be setting up, in this whole of society approach, should we be setting up a private prosecution capacity that can tooth comb the Zondo report, the Mpati report, the Nugent report, and all the others, and get those prosecutions done?
Thanks, Helen. Look, you're quite right. The NPA has been decimated, and it is far from what it used to be, and it is weakened completely. And we honestly thought that once Cyril Ramaphosa came in and put Shamila Batoy there, that she would get into building and recapacitating the NPA. And she hasn't been able to do that as fast as she needs to. The quality of prosecutors is weakened, which is why we decided to set up our own state capture team with the Gupta leaks, with all the information, and help them build cases. And there's a section in the NPA Act, Section 27, which allows you to make direct referrals. And that's what we've been doing. But the frustration for us is that we've been building these cases. So essentially what we do is we build a case in the same format and way that the prosecutors do it, because we've got that expertise in this team of 45 staff, as our advocate, Stefanie Fick, and lawyers that build cases. So we build these referrals, provide all the evidence. This is the painstaking work that has to take place. All they have to do, they're not allowed to take that and just go and lay a charge. They've got to verify, are we feeding them bad information? So what they do is they subpoena the banks and they get all the data and the real information, which we've already got copies of. They verify it, and then they have a very strong case. The sad thing is that they haven't been doing anything. So we gave them a couple of years to get their house in order, and they haven't. They're under immense pressure now. We have a meeting coming up with her. We've met with her as a collective of civil society entities a month ago. And I think it is one of the reasons why Hermione Cronje has gone. This organization needs leadership. It needs people to hold the prosecutors to account who are not advancing cases. So I agree with you, Helen, that it is weakened. It is so weak, which is why it's taking so long. But I guess our philosophy at OUTA, and it has always been, even right in the beginning when we laid the case against Dudu Mnyeni, there were times when we questioned what were we doing and was it worth it. And when she was declared the delinquent director, it set precedent for future cases. And we're going to take that a lot further as well. And Zondo talks about that and talks about more delinquent director, using the law. But private companies as well as SOEs hold those directors to account, make sure they can never sit on boards again. That's one way of having accountability as well, remove them from their powers of influence. So I guess this whole issue of resilience and setting out on something and sticking to it is quite critical. So for us it's about...
Sorry, Wayne, just that question was really relevant. Private prosecutions.
Well, I'm going to come to that now. So
we've got a minute left.
Private prosecutions is a tough one, because the NPA doesn't give you that power. They are the only ones that are allowed to prosecute. We do private prosecutions. We've gone to them a number of times on the Aurora mines and so forth. You can only do a private prosecution if the NPA gives you a nollie prosecute certificate, and then when you get that, you can go ahead. There's only been 3 cases in the country before, 1 successful. We've gone to them and said we would love to do private prosecutions, but here's the problem with private prosecutions. Let's say the state does allow, and the law changes and says, right, people start bringing private prosecutions. That's the worst thing that can happen for this country, because the people with the money, the Guptas, will plow the money in, and private prosecutions will start tomorrow. It's the people who've got the money to bring those cases, and they will wear down, so they will keep you trapped in court, innocent people. They will make life difficult. So it's not you've got to be careful what you wish for in that space. We also thought this would be a great idea, let us do private prosecutions. But it's the private prosecutions that are going to come from the bad guys that are going to go after Cyril. There'll be private prosecution cases against Cyril, against Helen, against Alan Windy, because they will pick up things, they'll make things up and say, well, we don't mind spending 10 million rand in court and keep these people locked up and just lock you all up. You don't want that. You want the NPA who has to do it properly, but what we're doing is supporting them. We're inside providing strong cases. And I think that and bringing civil claims and against delinquent directors, making directors delinquent, that's the journey to go. But we've got to build the capacity in the NPA. There's a lot of work. Not when I say we, they have to. But we have to push. Civil society, political parties, whoever it is, you have to push harder and harder. And if the narrative gets louder, I think the pressure becomes unbearable for them and they have to work in the right direction, not the wrong direction. So that's our journey and we have to just make it work. And we have to hope that things will change, because hope is what changes the trajectory of countries. We can't give up. Thanks, Alan.